Tag Talks. This is Paul Schiller at Tag Video Systems, Product Marketing Manager. Today I'm with Kevin Joyce, our Zero Friction Officer. And today's conversation is going to be a bit about the changes going on in our business, or our industry, I should say, and some of the operational models behind some of the media infrastructures that we'll be talking about today. And Kevin's been very close to our customers and commercial strategies for a long time. He's got a very sharp perspective on what's working, what's not, and where things are headed. Welcome, Kevin.
Hello, Paul. How are you today?
Doing great. And you?
Excellent.
Good.
We're just coming off of 38 degrees Celsius weather here the last couple of days.
Which is 95?
Which for the Americans, yeah, it's about 96.
Wow. Yeah, it's about the same here.
And that's without humidity.
Mm.
So, anywho.
Okay.
It's always good if you talk about the weather a little bit.
The weather around the world. Here we go.
Should we talk about the weather of our industry, Paul?
Yeah. What is the weather of the industry? So what kinds of pressures, speaking of weather, what kind of pressure are media companies dealing with today?
You know, in some places it's very cold, in some places it's very hot. So, yeah, I mean, that's true in any industry, but our industry is going through so much change right now. The transformation of our business, moving from, I hate to use the word analog, but the best way to think about it is moving from an analog to a truly digital business, from SDI to IP workflows, and it's, and the consumer habits of how people are consuming content is completely disrupting everything. It's disrupting technology, it's disrupting business models, it's disrupting operations, and so you couldn't live in a more dynamic time than in this industry. I think it's one of the most dynamic times ever. Every variable is changing at the same time, which makes it fun.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. You mentioned business models. What about licensing models? What are some of the why are the traditional licensing models struggling to keep up with what we're seeing today?
Well, business models are dependent on really two factors. The primary factor is how does the client want to buy the technology, and that greatly impacts the business models or the licensing models. The other side of it is the vendors, and how are the vendors' businesses structured. And so in our industry, it was a very hardware-centric business. The broadcast industry, as you know, was a bespoke hardware business. It had a lot of dedicated processing power. So a lot of the technology providers had to develop their own hardware, their own chips, their own FPGAs, etc. Printed circuit boards, all of that. So the cycles of innovation, when you're in the hardware business, are longer. And so now you start creating your business models over a certain period of time that it's going to take R&D to develop something, and what your return on that is. And so they take more time, and they're slower. Now you move to a software business, and people are going to OpEx models or pure software. Versions are coming out monthly, quarterly. If you're in a DevOps environment, you're getting updates daily. So just think of the speed differences between those, and the impact that has on the business models. So that's completely disrupted, how you license, how you sell. Do you still capitalize things, or do you go into an operational budget where you use that as an OpEx cost and you write that off as an operational expense every single year? So there's a lot more discussion. Not just about technology, but also the business models, and how does our solution and the value proposition, what is the best way for them to acquire that aligns with their business and their financial requirements. So I think it's a much more sophisticated business-oriented sell than it was historically.
That's interesting, Kevin. You talked about a lot of different things: hardware, FPGAs, CapEx, OpEx. Where do you see, as our zero friction officer, where do you see the most friction in not only the operational models, but in some of the licensing and even in the um, workflows?
The biggest challenge, I think, always and historically in our industry is um, how do you optimize the investment that you make that aligns with the use case of what you need it for? Do you need the technology 24/7? Do you need the technology 8 hours a day? And historically, there wasn't that option. You bought a piece of hardware, it was available. You could use it whenever you wanted, but you owned it and you tried to maximize the utilization, of that asset the best that you can. So it really wasn't optimized that well. People didn't work 24/7. The asset was in one location. And unless you were a huge operation, you typically didn't run 24/7. Now, if you're an OTT or a cable company, you're running 24/7, and that's different types of equipment. But if you're in a live production facility, you're not, using that all the time. So one of the challenges is to come up with a model that aligns the investment that they make in your technology with where they get their revenue. And so we believe that the future is going to be is that they will pay you, the clients will pay you when they're using your technology. So you have to be very, very agile, and you have to be very, very efficient from an organization perspective. They should pay for that agility, but they probably won't pay as much as they would pay if they bought something that theoretically can be used 24/7. So the future is going to be aligning usage with business models.
So
Now,
you mentioned
OpEx models align very well with that, but our industry's financial structure and their budgets are not OpEx oriented; they're CapEx oriented.
so you mentioned you mentioned utility, you mentioned agility. What are people getting wrong about utilization, and how can they increase agility if they change what
Again,
they're using with utilization?
it goes back to some of the legacy habits I think that people had. Engineers, they're building a new project. The project's scoped out to do X number of productions, receive X number of sources. So they calculate the usage that they're going to need, and they give themselves a buffer. And now that budget that they had for that facility is supposed to work for 7 years, 12 years. Now, how often did that work out? Who could predict the future that well? And if you could, then why were you being an engineer? Go buy lottery tickets or do something that could give you a better return. So this new model and the new future is it's agile because use it when you need it. And if you don't, so it gives them unlimited scalability. Use scale up when you need it, scale down when you need it. Think of the Olympics. The Olympics is the classic case of scale in our industry. Every 2 years, winter, summer. Summer the big one, every 4 years. That event required more production equipment than any other, event in the world. How did you handle that? So they would go out, they'd buy equipment, they'd rent a bunch of equipment, pay a lot of money for that. But now take that down into smaller events. There's events happening all the time. Their usage has to spike. Now, in the past, if they only bought a certain amount of equipment and they have an opportunity for an event, but it spikes the utilization beyond their capacity, they wouldn't be able to do that event. So now they're losing a revenue opportunity because they don't have the agility to scale when they want. In the future, that won't be the case.
So how should they be making decisions around infrastructure, around the business needs that you're talking about today?
You got to pick the vendors that you believe are going to continue to invest in R&D that will allow you to align your business model and your usage, your being the client, with the vendor's technology. You better pick the right partners that give you that maximum flexibility, that maximum integration with other systems, that makes it seamless and that makes it easy for you to scale up and scale down when you want. You shouldn't have to be subjected to the vendor's business model because that's the way that they want to sell it to you. The business model should be aligned to your usage.
So what makes, not to be too commercial, but the zero friction model of licensing and our whole philosophy of zero friction kind of describe what that is from a philosophy perspective as well as from.
I mean, how more descriptive can you be, Paul, than zero friction?
Right. Go ahead.
Well, okay, so what does zero friction mean? Well, zero friction was designed from the beginning to overcome those legacy issues. That would allow the client to select the business model that best aligns with their use case. If it's a 24/7 use case, then CapEx is the right model because you're going to have maximum utilization. You're going to get a return on that asset pretty quickly. So that works. But what if you don't need it all the time? So in TAG, the zero friction model has two dimensions to it. One is the business model, CapEx, OpEx model for 3-year subscriptions, 1-year subscription, 1-month subscription, hourly, and hybrid, where you can mix and match any one of those models that best aligns. And it is dependent upon the use case of our system as well. Live production is different than master control, and playout is different than delivery in our platform. Even the second dimension is the zero friction license can do anything across all of those workflows. So not only do we give them dynamic business models, we make it operationally, very, very simple that any license can be used for any use case at any time. And it can be moved from one use case to the other. So you could buy licenses in live production studios that aren't used all the time. And then when they're not in use, shift those licenses to another use case or to another place in the world. So it's operationally has zero friction, and then financially has zero friction as well.
So how does that help with quality of service and ultimately impacting the quality of experience? How does that work at scale, and how does
slightly
that
different?
help?
Slightly, well, quality of service at scale, which is really the ultimate value proposition of TAG. It helps the scale part of it. And the scale part of it is everything we've been talking about, is the dynamic nature of sizing your system for what you need at that time. So that's the scale. The other part of scale is with the automation and all the functionality that we do, that we allow our clients to scale their operations exponentially without increasing labor, without increasing costs, because the system does a huge amount of scale. The quality side of it is separate. That's just the functionality you get from the real-time media platform that is monitoring just about every attribute, every codec, every use case that you have across your supply chain. And the fact that one platform can do it, then you're assuring yourself the highest level of quality that you could ever have. Because the same platform is across live production, master control, playout, delivery, OTT, and all the way to the consumer device, lens to lens, with one platform, with one single license structure, with one source of data that you can be looking at all times. That's a ton of complexity that existed historically, that you used disparate systems and tried to put them all together to deliver the quality. So that's how we deliver the quality side. The scale side, with that one system, it really simplifies things. It lowers their costs and allows them to dynamically adjust their business where they need to do it. So it's a very cool technological and operational strategy. But at the end of the day, it's all about money, and it's a very, very efficient way to grow a business while lowering your costs. And that's what it's all about, Paul. That's what quality of service at scale means.
Based on that, Kevin, what are some of the decisions that business leaders should be considering when looking at infrastructure, and how will that not only shape their business needs for today, but in the future?
They're under a lot of cost pressures. They have to reduce the legacy cost structure of their businesses. Depending on what market that you're in. If you're a cable company, of course, those are obvious. If you're OTT, it's becoming a crowded market. If it's live production, you're getting challenged by new technologies that dramatically reduce the cost of building live production. So you need to reduce the amount of resources that you have in your organization. Now, historically, a lot of the large clients, they had these massive engineering departments. And these engineering departments were the SI. They were the ones that put together the solutions. Now, there were SIs and there were channel partners, but there were still large engineering departments in these large broadcasters and media companies that did a lot of the middleware or made sure that things worked and connected. They can't afford that. They can't do that anymore. Now you move to IP. The vendors are all trying to figure it out themselves. We're all on our little islands. And we're IP. We're IP. Oh, do those things talk to each other? No. Oh, that's a problem. So who does that? The media companies are, luckily they've got engineering staffs and they figure this out. Doesn't work. Not going to work. The next generation of IP, which is, let's say, the third gen, the first generation is, hey, let's see if we can do this. The second generation is, well, that wasn't so good. It was pretty hard and expensive. Let's see if we can improve. And now we're in the third where, hey, we think we've got this figured out. Well, figuring that out is being able to communicate with the other vendors and being able to deliver the clients a integrated, cohesive, orchestrated, automated, all those great words everybody's using, so that they don't have to have those departments, which they don't trust the vendors, that they have that figured out yet. So selecting a partner that has even an inferior solution from a feature set perspective, but is open and has greater connectivity and will work with the ecosystem around them to improve that system on a continuous basis, those are the partners that are going to win in the future. Now, that happens to be a world that we have to live in, because as a monitoring platform, we don't stand alone. We have to work across the ecosystem. We have to seamlessly have our APIs work with other people. So when you're looking at your infrastructure decisions, in the past, you could make a very easy decision. I'm just going to buy an end-to-end EVERT system, because the EVERT system, that should work. Every single thing from EVERTs, one throat to choke. We've talked about that before. One of my favorite lines is like, oh, that's the value proposition? From a vendor, is you got one throat to choke? Well, that sounds like a great relationship, right? The future is they don't want a throat to choke. They want to focus on their business. And the only way that's going to work is that these new IP vendors figure their stuff out themselves. They work, their R&D departments understand each other's APIs. When there's an issue, Paul, how many times do we have a problem? We're dealing with the problem in our customer success organization, and it's not necessarily the tag system. It's that there's a new version of XYZ software. Oh, do you have that version? No. Okay, well, So you start to work in the sandbox nicely. You don't throw sand and say, not my problem. That doesn't work for the media companies anymore. So infrastructure decisions, I think, are going to be made less about checking boxes on features and checking boxes on what kind of vendor, what kind of culture, what kind of attitude, what kind of skill sets does that vendor have that's going to replace the internal engineering teams that we had, that we can rely on, and still deliver the highest quality of service at scale. There you go. Comes right back.
Yeah. So you mentioned vendors, you mentioned partners. There's definitely a distinction. Which one are we? And before you answer that, you also mentioned that our customers used to have these big, huge engineering departments. All I've seen is reduction in workforce, they've already done that. What else can they do other than just maintain their workforce where they are without having to add either infrastructure or high value labor, that type of thing? So, I know there's a question in there somewhere, but what I'm talking about is
I hear you.
Vendors, partners, workforce.
It's never ending, Paul. I mean, you and I came from a different industry, long ago, that went through the digitization of itself before the broadcast industry did. And when we thought that our clients had reduced all the costs that they could, guess what? They kept going. They kept going. They kept going. So the first answer is, there's a lot of reductions in force as people are starting to get the real synergies from the investments that they made. It's not over. If we look at where the adoption is of IP globally, and even in the advanced markets of the world, there's still a long way to go before this industry is 100% IP. And as the clients get more and more IP and digital, the more automated things become, the different types of people are required to manage those workflows than were historically. So they might not be the same people. There might be a lot less in some areas. There might be more in the others, but they're continuing to do it. We see it in the news every single day. We saw it in the news this week. We're watching clients split their businesses apart, all reduce their costs. I mean, it's business 101 stuff. But they're not done in reducing the costs, and that's an opportunity for us to continue to innovate and provide them the confidence that our system will deliver what the quality that they used to get and even more, and we will work seamlessly with the other systems so that they don't need the staff to be able to do that in the future.
Great.
That's what we're seeing.
Yeah, good conversation. Appreciate it, Kevin. Want to add anything else before we go?
The only thing I would add, Paul, is, we talked a lot of, if I asked you a question, did we talk about technology today or did we talk about business today? What would be your answer?
Business.
Okay. So I think one of the challenges that we have in our industry is we don't talk about business. We talk about technology. Now, certainly at TAG, we're a technology company, but we're not alone. There's a lot of nerds, there's a lot of really smart people, and they love the toys and they love the stuff. We know that. And that's necessary. That's needed. That's table stakes. Now we have to put on top of that is strong business skills that help people understand the financial business value proposition of the technology that we're offering, and not assume that if you have content matching, and a penalty box and monitoring by exception, that gets translated into an economic value proposition. And so I think working on the fundamental business skills to help our clients understand what investments that they should make now to deliver value in the future, we need to be a lot better at that. So that's what I'll end our discussion today with.
So what I'm taking away from your wisdom here, Kevin, is the fact that we need to deliver quality at scale without adding infrastructure or additional costs.
Well, the beauty of, you're not missing anything. You're making it too complex, because all you need to say is quality of service at scale. Because scale means that you can grow your business without having to continue to invest at the same level. So scale is how you make more money. That's where you get efficiencies.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate the time today.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure.